My attempts to avoid violence have failed.
Ooh, yeah, I've been pretty conflicted about doing this video. This is completely out of stock, basically impossible to find anywhere new. Oh look, there's an Italian expansion for 140 bucks. But again, this is Civilization. And with the recent look at the 4x euro here that proclaims to be a 4x, that's not really a 4x, my mind could not go off of this Civilization by Kevin Wilson here, and we got requests for it, so I guess we're giving this one a go. Again, you can't really buy this right now, but hopefully that changes in the future or you get some cool perspective from this video. Kevin Wilson's Civilization is the grand computer game idea scaled to a tabletop experience in about 4 hours, with 4 friends, and yeah, 4x. Look at all these X's. This isn't a full, comprehensive review as you'd expect on this channel, because this game has so much stuff, and we're adding in all the expansions. This is a streamlined Civ review that we could get out within reasonable time. Let's go. Here's a quick how to play given the scope of this game. Everyone's gonna pick a faction at the beginning of the game to play, each with their own faction specialty. They also have their own starting tile. So everyone has a starting tile that they slot into a corner of the board in the beginning of the game. And then the rest of the board is made up out of these randomized face down tiles here that get explored as the game goes on. There's not just one, but 4 ways to win this game. You can go military, where you destroy someone else's capital, you win. The game immediately ends. Or technology, you research the highest tech in the game, space flight, you win the game. Or cultural, you just become so cultured that you move all the way up this track, you win. Last one is economic. A little trickier, but basically you get 15 of this coin resource, then you win the game. Each round has 2 main things. First, everyone does economic stuff, then everyone does movement related stuff. So in this first phase, economic or city management, everyone does an action with each of their cities. I have 2 cities here, I do 1 action with each. Your city's usefulness is what's around the cities, these 8 spaces. Like count up the hammers, and that's how much you can produce. That is, build better buildings. Building better buildings improve your city, but cover up other spaces, so you have to be mindful of that change. Or you could just buy more units. Or you could buy more unit cards. We'll get to that in a bit. And lastly, you could devote your city to the arts. Count up all the culture in your city to get this culture resource that is fuel to move up this culture track. After everyone has finished doing the stuff with all their cities, then everyone can move every single one of their pieces on the map. To explore more of the map, just spend a move, then it flips over. Each unit can move 2 spaces normally, which can easily be expanded upon getting technology, including the ability to go across water. If people move into each other, that's fighting time. Fighting is really untraditional in Civ, where these flags on the board are a representation of your fighting force. These let you get access to your standing forces deck right here, where you draw more cards based off of the amount of flags you have fighting. So if you have 1 flag, that's 3 cards you draw. 2 flags, 5 cards you draw. 3 flags, 7 cards you can draw. You get the idea. You look at your hand and orient everything to the tier you've unlocked. So here we just have all the basic stuff, and then you take turns playing 1 card at a time to battle. Units go on this battlefield that you can think of like an old school Yu-Gi-Oh mat, where you can only play a card in 1 slot at a time. The moment a card is placed to be across an opponent, they fight. doing their damage to each other right away. If they counter, like a mounted unit trumping a ranged unit, the mounted unit gets first strike to do damage first. That could mean the ranged unit dies without ever attacking. After the fight is done, then the next turn player plays a card, either to a fresh spot or to attack a damaged enemy. And this one card play handoff continues until both players run out of cards in hand. Then you count up your unit's remaining health to see who has more. This is like a combat score, and then you're going to add modifiers to that number, like generals you have employed and or if defending a city. Whoever has more of this number wins the fight, kills their opponent's remaining cards and their figure on the map, then steals the loot from their opponent. In this case, let's say they chose to steal a resource. If an attacker wins against a city, he destroys it, or if he destroys a capital, that's the game. This is Civ, so how do you get technology? Well, after everyone has finished moving, it's the end of the round, meaning you research tech, using a resource called trade. You get income of this every round from the little recycle symbols all around your cities. Then if you have enough, you can use all of it to research one technology. Spend it all from here to get a tier 1 tech. Spend it all from here to get a tier 2 tech. You also research tech in this pyramid shape. You can't build a tier 2 without 2 tier 1s under it. As for the actual tech cards, they can give you a permanent building unlock, a special ability by spending these specific resources, upgrade your military units permanently, or give you some type of passive unlock. Let's talk about the resources. Many techs have a resource icon on them, which means they have an ability that a resource can be spent to use. These circle resources can be harvested by your cities as an action if they're on your city outskirts, or can be grabbed from these innocent barbarians that spawn as the map gets uncovered. If these are the red village tokens, they put up a fight. Not only are these plunder resources kept secret from your opponents, they exclusively have the blessed spies for strong counterplay abilities, and uranium to give you what you want, the ability to launch nukes. Oh, and then also to build a new city, you just transform one of these wagon looking things called scouts into a city. And just like that, you have in total one action you can take with your capital and a second action you can take now with your new city. Then, next round, everyone just counts up all their trade from their cities, adds it to their dial here, and then you just take an action with each of your cities. Then you can move units. And remember, anytime one of the 4 win conditions are completed, the game ends. And that's the bare bones of this gigantic 4X game. Pros time. Time to gush about why this game is great. The aesthetic of it all just looks on point. There's this obviously civilization-inspired art that gets you all the way to the Statue of Liberty and United Nations at some point. There's computers, with some Zulu in the mix. Yep, it's all here. The map is able to link together in a fairly realistic looking way too, with mountains, deserts, created rivers and ponds. Super impressive. Everything cardboard in here feels great to the touch. Let's go into the 4 victory conditions that are so central to this game's identity. Now, when any of these happen, the game immediately ends. So you always have to be watching your opponents on their progress of these. Note how one of them is military, so that makes the threat of someone just walking in to conquer someone's base to immediately win the game very real mid to late game. These 4 different victories just feed into each other so well to make pursuing multiple at a time feel very natural. Technology is a central idea that everyone is grabbing anyways, because permanently grabbing new tech, like unlocking new buildings or switching to new government, yes, government is a thing of this game, this all feels great for your civilization. Notice how this can let you unlock cultural buildings. Well, that helps with getting culture for a cultural victory. Or notice how it upgrades your military units. Well, that can be for a military victory. Or they give you access to more coin. That's an economic victory. If you go for a cultural win, well heck, you're drawing cards at each step of the track. Those can give you crazy new gifts from afar that are resources to boost your economy. Or you get great people. Wow, placing them down could be a free coin. Or how about this general that helps with all your combats? If you go for an economic win, well, the actual ability of coin raises your trade floor whenever you research technology. Wait, what does this mean? Well, if you had 10 coin and you were to spend all of your trade, 13 trade here, to get a tier 2 tech, you actually only spent 3 to research this because you don't go lower than 10. So this really helps with tech progression to get expensive techs turn after turn. And then if you go for a military win, well, you're probably attacking your opponents and you steal resources when you beat them in battle. You bring that plunder home and inject those resources into your other win conditions. Or you can just tear down their economic cities, like, yeah, let's just get rid of this city that is full of your culture, including a wonder, now it's gone, haha. Since these are all so closely linked, you'll find that you'll end up progressing probably 2 or 3 loosely as you just play the game. You can switch your primary focus fairly easy mid-game too because of this. If you realize some guy is gonna beat you in this tech race, well, you can just go pedal to the metal on military to try to kill him before he can tech up. Oh yeah, that goes into how this game balances military and economic elements so well. You can never just purely isolate up and turtle, and to just have your cities produce culture, and maybe you'll have some coin without paying attention to your opponent's military movements. Not only are you concerned about someone running down towards your base, you also need to worry about what type of units to buy. Remember how if you counter units in combat, you get first strike? Well, if this guy here has a bunch of spearmen, you want to get a bunch of archers. Or these are catapults if you upgraded them. But see how it costs more now to build if you've upgraded them? Maybe you don't want to upgrade so fast. Due to how building cities literally adds onto players' spawn points for units, it's this dynamic feeling of the map being unexplored. Then slowly building cities to get more economy, and that puts them closer and closer to their opponents. If you lose a fight against an opponent attacking one of your extra cities, that can be absolutely devastating as you lose all the trade from that city, as well as the entire action it gave you. Yeah, that makes Civ this incredibly dramatic game, where anyone's economy can just get completely turned around if they get careless with the military and now their city is gone. Oh, but that's just the start of it. See, you also lose your military units from fighting, and say you just have one more standing force left. Uh-oh. Not only can you not fight for revenge, but now everyone is incentivized to attack you because attacking anyone's capital and destroying it is a win condition. This is where the dynamic of the game can turn on its head as people come out and say, oh, you're actually super vulnerable right now. Yeah, I was going for a tech victory, but why don't I just win the game right now? Now multiple people are racing towards this prize, trying to trip and shove others trying to get the end goal, the super vulnerable player. This is where you can see all the hidden information of the game shine, where you can see cards drawn from advancing on the cultural track played, and then the resources from huts or villages, which were hidden, are being used in combats to try to win the game or slow down the other hunters from winning the game. Then the guy who is the main target is panicking to raise as many troops as possible, but also making deals with maybe one opponent to ensure that he survives the game. And it's of course in that one opponent's interest to help him, so that the game doesn't immediately end. But then you're also walking a super fine line here, because this so-called ally, while defending a losing player's capital successfully, could just turn around and attack the same capital to win the game. This goes into how positioning is so important. You're always questioning why flags are close to capitals, not even just including your own because, well, any capital could end the game. The movement is all in turn order that changes clockwise every turn, so you can actually set up situations where you attack last in one turn, then first in the next turn, and that's an insane amount of pressure that you can put on one opponent. Other than that, everyone is locked into this careful tiptoeing of grabbing resources from neutral areas on the board, being anxious that your opponent doesn't attack your exploration force, because that can drain army troops from your standing forces deck that you wanted for your main attacking force. And then plenty of little alliances are made to ensure that these helpless economical scouts don't get attacked, because they immediately die when attacked. We haven't covered this mechanic yet, but scouts are careful management on the map because they extend a city's resources. So this space they were on was funneled back into a city. Alternatively, scouts are pretty much the only way to make a new city. Now you can see why killing someone's scout is extremely painful, as they have to make a new scout and then move it back out again to build that city. Building cities is one of the trickiest things to decide on, where not only are you careful about what resources surround the city that give it its attributes, but how close you are to your opponents. Like, oh my god, this placement means you're right next to someone and you can attack them so easily and they can attack you. So now we get to the Civ cool thing, the progression through the ages. Civ has this early game opening of exploring, slowly getting bigger, then mid-game ramping up with all the technologies and more cities on the map, and then there's going to be late game extreme modernity. There's always this constant smooth progression of getting new things in this game. Early game, you're deciding what initial technologies to get. Maybe you decide to research to go across water to explore, or research to try to start winning early combats. Then everyone's first city placement is a huge milestone that sets the stage of mid-game, as a possible outpost against their enemies that doubles their city actions a turn. All the while, you keep building new buildings to double your city's output of hammers, culture, trade, whatever you're focusing on, and then you can have these great wise old people show up to boost a bunch of stuff. The Fame and Fortune expansion also has great people with their very own powers, which will greatly dictate your strategy going forward. How about Sun Tzu with the Art of War, where you can stall during combat? Or this Thomas Edison fellow who can copy someone else's invention, technology. Yeah, use their technology and call it your civilization's own. Mid-game will really have you feeling the results of people getting more and more tech. One great tech that really shows the ramp is engineering, where not only does it let you build this super feel-good 2-hammer and 2-trade giving aqueduct that makes any city competent, this tech lets you buy 2 things with 1 city a turn. This gets added on to more of the board explored, perhaps 3rd cities being built, with armies getting stronger and stronger with more and better units. People are also experimenting with different governments, like switching from a democracy to a monarchy, because my people should not care about trade when my capital can get 2 actions. Many of the neutral barbarians will be increasingly killed off to grab their hidden resources, like, oh my goodness, that's uranium. We can use that for nukes, huh? Late game has the nukes with atomic theory. It can. There is no guarantee that Gandhi will be firing red-hot missiles into the sky every game, because uranium is mostly given by random barbarian and hut drops. But then even the possibility of just lifting a finger, spending some uranium, and destroying someone's city is hilarious late game. Later in games, we'll account for something more called stacking limits that keeps getting upgraded, meaning that you can put more army flags in a single space. More flags in a space for a combat means more cards drawn for a combat, and here, you're drawing 9 cards from your deck. Whereas early game, you'd have maybe just 1 flag, you could only draw 3 cards. Every single card you draw for combat will see fighting, but this also means that this is way more cards to lose, because if you lose a fight, all your units die forever. Those units you paid for with your cities are gone. This just sets the stage for late game swinginess and dynamic board states. Factor in there's this technology called planes, where you can move now 6 spaces a turn. And then also, these planes can never get trumped by any other unit. Oh, or hey, there's this steam engine technology that lets you just teleport across the map. Seriously, sometimes with atomic theory, launching a nuke is not your first choice because you can also use it to take another action with each of your cities. Those are crucial city turns late game that could let you get more tanks to roll into your opponent's city, or more culture to get that culture victory. The game just ends up culminating in this grand tension of people getting closer and closer to their victory conditions, and then having more tricks up their sleeves to keep pursuing those goals, or defending against their opponents that are trying to stop them. And remember how we said this game was militarily punishing? Well, combats can be very swingy for anyone throughout the game, even if you think you're ahead, because a couple fights here and there may see your combat deck slowly depleting. Buying a single troop can take an entire robust city's turn, so late game you can find that you're bleeding troops so fast that you can't replenish them fast enough. Juggernauts can get weakened with more and more epic battles, and initially weaker players can have military victory be very feasible. Even if it's just a ragtag team of medieval knights and riflemen against planes and tanks, there is a certain quality in having more quantity, and you can destroy their capital of modern architecture with catapults. And of course, because this is Civilization, let's talk about the civilizations to make games feel much different. They all have a unique starting tile that generally feels realistic, like the Germans have access to many hammers to start cranking out your war machines. Or the Japanese are literally surrounded by water and can use it to trade like crazy. The actual faction boards are so much fun too, with different starting governments, technologies, and an ability that can really start breaking the game for you. Like how about these Russians that can straight up copy technology from their opponents by moving an army unit to that opponent's city? They're just getting a tech for free here. Lots of political deals could be made with them, as you can let a Russian player move an army to your city to give him one of your techs. The Greeks can also be doing this fun counterplay mind game tech thing, where if they research a tech that no one else knows, they keep all their trade. So you have even more incentive to eye each other's tech trends. Just like what we talked about with the Russians, there's so much room for asymmetric negotiation here with this game's bajillion moving parts. You're negotiating around civilization special abilities, and then also with tangible things like culture cards. At the beginning of every round, there's a trade phase where the game encourages you to trade resources, favors, and, well, literally the things called trade. There's very little restrictions on trade, letting you constantly feel connected to every other civilization. One more awesome counterplay thing, the fact that the resource market is closed. There's only as many of these resource tokens as there are players in the game. 4 players has 4 wheat, so if all the wheat is out, you gotta wait for it to be spent before you can grab it. Late game, this could even result in one guy hoarding all the iron to trigger all of his combat abilities while no one else can. But this wouldn't be Civ without being able to build all the awesome wonders of the world. Wonders are more awesome flavor that make their way into all of this, where if you commit to spend a lot for a building, you get a pretty neat looking building in a city with an ability. These range anywhere from the ancient Great Wall, all the way to the freaking Pentagon, so your units can never get countered in combat. Or how about the ones that put a really fun clock on the game, like the Panama Canal that gives you a coin every turn. You know, so every turn is faster progress towards the 15 you need to win the game. Similarly, the Sydney Opera House moves you up a space on the culture track for free. Yes, you don't have to pay this cost. So wait, these are overpowered, right? Well, yes, if you couldn't do anything about them. But you totally can. Just destroy the city they're in. Remember, that's not that hard to do. Or do something called obsoleting wonders, just rendering their abilities useless. So once again, the cool theme bling lends itself into great tension. Let's zoom out and go back to the 4 win conditions. Not only do they tie into each other well as we talked about before, but with all these military twists, you're typically not sure who will win the game with what win condition. These 4 win conditions also provide different playthrough experiences with which path you want to take. Culture is just a long track and really requires a strong economy to progress through the later stages of the track. But you'll be drawing better and better culture cards to slow down people from attacking your cultured cities. Military is the most volatile. A capital destruction could easily happen mid to late game. And even if you're not pursuing a military win, you still have to factor in defense. And you need to balance your military upgrades with quantity of units. Going strong military early can have strong upside with pillaging, but also strong downside if you lose fights, and realize that your economy sucked to begin with and you can't replace your army. Then an economical win is also extremely dynamic, with the capacity to chain so many little tech abilities to ramp up coins to suddenly win the game. Then finally, tech is on average the slowest victory in the game. Building up a pyramid to a 5th level is extremely hard, but no one can ever delete your tech, which makes this a safe path. Also, there's lots of ways to start researching 2, maybe even 3 techs on one turn later in the game. And yeah, look how many techs there are. I'm losing my mind. There's so much variety in how you want to approach this. This all just wraps up for this game to have insane replay value once you toss in the expansion factions. Maps will look different as these tiles are randomized and rotated every game, changing water structure, city placement, and helpless barbarians, so you gotta adapt to them. Wonders are also randomized every game. Each faction can go for at least 2 different win conditions that spur on different sequencing of 44 technologies. There's a lot to adapt around here with every new game. This civilization is just the grand vision of the Civilization franchise, with all its 4Xness translated to the table, especially with just killing 1 capital as a military victory to end the game. And then this game is splattered with so many Civ awesome thematic meets gameplay goodies. It's needless to say you can name drop so many things and it would just make sense. Nikola Tesla helps you advance technology faster. Marco Polo, a bajillion trade. Irrigation lets you build more cities because you're not so disgusting. Tier 4 tech called combustion can literally just destroy opponents' buildings by walking onto them. And cities just have different feels to them based off of what path you're pursuing. If you're really going for culture, you're gonna have a bunch of expensive wonders and temples. If you want tech, you'll need a lot of trade, and so maybe you'll have a lakeside city with plenty of harbors. If you're going degenerate and just focusing on purely killing your enemies, your cities will be fairly industrial. Or sometimes all your resources get funneled into your army, your city kinda sucks. The scene is just ripe for all these hilarious parallel universe interactions that happen with these wonders, technologies, and great people. You can have the Mongols helped by Orville Wright to give them planes to run side by side into battle with horsemen to attack surprised Aztecs. What type of alternate history continent is this? Or the Greeks have Martin Luther King at their disposal, who prevents them from ever going into anarchy. So then now they can devote their effort to safely build the wonder that is the internet. Okay, quickish cons. For the interest of time, I've lumped nitpicks into these cons. First, this battle system in base game was just not healthy because your units had the exact same stats for attacking and health, meaning that some cards were just strictly better than others. If you have just 1s and 2s and your opponent mostly has 3s and they find out they have that advantage over you, they can just steamroll you early, and this is mostly through luck in what's supposed to be an epic conflict game. Also, calculating anything combat related is extremely annoying without this card that is in the Wisdom in Warfare expansion that tells you how many cards to draw, what rewards for winning are, and how to calculate who wins the fight. If you can't get the expansion, I recommend printing at least something on BGG to help. Actually, more on the combat, because its system is literally a minigame of drawing cards from a deck, triggering abilities left and right, much like a card game within a bigger game, this comes at some inherent costs. First, unless your deck is tiny, you have no guarantee what your flags actually represent as you attack, since your card draw from your deck is randomized. That's super unthematic that isn't Civ-like at all. Next, combat can sometimes take a while and take up a lot of space despite being simple at its core. You're just playing one card. But this nuanced combat has countless technology abilities that can make it take some time. This isn't a dice rolling spree at all. Now let's talk about these civilizations, where you get 16 in total with the expansions, and there's a clear ranking system here. There's the Chinese, who get a free revive of a unit after every single combat if one died. That's so good it can be used any time of the game for crazy tempo. Get a free revive of a plane. Or the Arabs. These are actually broken. They get a culture kickback every time they spend resources, and what do you know? They start with every single resource in the game too. That's really good tempo. Plus, they literally go up in the culture track for free every time they do this mechanic called investing, which is an expansion mechanic of simply moving a coin you have to trigger a separate card. This makes culture track victories way too good for them. Piled onto how a robust culture engine is hard to stop because the culture guy is constantly drawing these really good one-time use abilities that are typically free to play. Compare this to the Zulu, which feel almost intentionally bad, like as a joke. They have 2 starting artillery extra units. Okay, that's barely useful. And then they just specialize in befriending the Huts and barbarians on the map. So after about early game, these guys basically have no ability. So yeah, truly playing like an F tier faction. Since the game has an unorthodox fighting system with the army decks being all of your troops, that means that strong factions don't really get exploited in the traditional way of being spread too thin. Even a single flag has access to at least a handful of upgraded troops and all of their resources to spend. Plus, if you're weak, you might not even want to attack anyways, because in doing so, even if you're helping the losing cause in slowing down the current winner, you can be really speeding up you losing the game, as another player can attack your capital after your army deck gets depleted in another fight. Let's talk more about being weak here. Hey Zulu. Let's say you're already behind and you have 1 card left in your deck versus your opponent's normal deck of cards, and you draw 1 card to fight during combat and they draw the normal 3. Well, 1 card versus 3 means you're pretty much gonna lose, and then after that fight, you have no more cards left in your deck. So that means anytime you get attacked on the map, you pretty much just automatically lose because you have no troops. This is far from a bad thing, especially once you're comfortable with the game, but is mechanically sour when weak factions try to fight against strong factions. To make this worse, in addition to winning the game off a capital win, there's really nice pillaging rewards from winning any combat, like stealing a trade or resource from the victor, or if it's a big fight, stealing a coin or copying a technology. These are big, and if you're quite weak, you're like marinated tender meat for the picking as people are hungrily running towards you to try to get loot or end the game so they can win. It can look so bleak as you are so far away from progressing win conditions as you're simply scrambling to survive. You know how many games have politics where you gang up on the winner, the winning guy? Well, Civ is built different. It has a reverse of that, where you can gang up on the loser, the losing guy. You really gotta be prepared for that manhunt exploitation in this game. It opens up these really cool negotiation possibilities, but for these weaker factions, they can feel like developing countries trying to negotiate with superpowers, and that doesn't go so well. By now, you've seen this game on the table, and it just has so many components and upgrades and pieces that you can find it difficult to keep track of what people have. While the actual map is clean, people just have so many resources, hidden resources, military units, and there's never one clear place to see it all. This gets compounded onto how there's so many swingy tiny text abilities. So if you're in a crucial fight, which is almost every fight in Civ due to how swingy it is, you really want to account for this guy's technology that heals all of his units in combat. Come late game, where each flag is moving 4 to 6 spaces a turn, where you want to move all your pieces and watch out for your opponents potentially moving onto you, lots of room for analysis paralysis. All of these military double-sided pieces could have just been colors that you move up this track, and then there should have been some type of dial to keep track of your trade for you so you don't have to count them up every single round. Oh, and then these culture tokens are really annoyingly small. This game is also really showing its age on how there should have been an introductory game of some kind, because while there is a nice index, this game has a lot of little exceptions with rules and unique map variants that starting out is very overwhelming. Keep in mind how this board game generally feels faithful to a video game without the video game automation. Okay, for player count, we've done 2-player games, which work to learn the mechanics, but has zero negotiation and should not really be taken that seriously. Once someone gets ahead in 2-player, they just steamroll or completely outpace you to just win the game, which is not how this game was designed to be like. Example, let's say the Egyptians start with this Hanging Gardens Ancient Wonder at the beginning of the game. This happened against me, and this lets them spawn a unit every single turn, so they just completely outpace you. Yeah, that was an unwinnable game for me. 3 players is totally fine, but suffers from a little less negotiation and a map with some weird indistances. The expansion lets you play with 5 people, but that tends to add unreasonable time length and is an extremely wonky map with a black hole in the middle, like it's the end of the world or something. Oh, and then the box enter and storage is that fantasy flight cavern thing, basically non-existent. I had to get a play note to help, and even then setup can be a little annoying. Civ gets a 7 out of 10 tentative score for the base game. Then with these 2 expansions, this raises to a 8 out of 10. Great. The base game really needs at least Wisdom in Warfare to smooth out the combat system in a long game with already inherently swingy combat. Then these added factions from both expansions just really help give you more medium weight factions to play against each other and strong factions to play against each other. I really don't see why you would ever play Zulu. Stepping back, all this stuff right here is extremely intimidating to a large chunk of this game's target audience. That is, people who are fans of the original franchise, Digital Civilization. They would go, oh wow, if this is gonna be that complex, why would I not just play the video game Civ? Think about playing Civilization on the computer, where the computer takes care of all the components and bookkeeping. You can start, play, and reset games way easier. Here, well, even though it will never run as long, this has the Civ formula where games could end early or run late to clock at many hours, all not helped by the table sprawl. Instead of the, just one more round please before I go to bed, feeling in Civilization, that can be replaced by, when is this game gonna end again? And you're kind of forced to complete a game once you get the ball rolling with all these components. The faithful, digital-like feel comes with an incredible amount of analog stuff and rules that would make any newcomer worried. The gameplay loop isn't that bad, but there's no tutorial and it just throws you into a hard study of the 25 Tier 1 and Tier 2 techs from right off the bat. The expansions are moduled, so you can pick which one to play with, but the problem is, to play with the new factions, you have to play with some of these modules I didn't go over, adding in maybe city-states, building programs, caravans, new buildings, social policies, something to explore called relics. It's a lot. Granted, in my experience playing with the modules from these expansions, I found that they mostly helped the game, but it's just adding more stuff. To put it in board game terms, the Civilization formula hilariously is, on here, a lot of Euro management, in cities and resources, then layered on top of this deck-built, swingy fighting system with the ameritrash abilities. The 4Xness comes in moving across these randomly created continents for all sorts of negotiation with your opponents in person controlled civilizations. Honestly, for all the hardcoreness here, maybe you'll just want to not take outcomes too seriously and laugh when late game tanks happen to fight spearmen and archers and maybe lose. Ah, Civ, for all your potential hilarity, this fluff on top of multiple systems may just be too clunky and unintuitive on a table. Combat here remains to be unthematic and un-Civ-like when updated. The learning curve is rough when newcomers can get so militarily exploited. This isn't TI4. In this game, you're encouraged to destroy your opponent's base all the time. If you're a Civilization fan, are you a fan of that feeling when you have to play on a table with all the pieces for 4 to 5 hours where your friends are constantly incentivized to kill you? Are many Civilization players playing this franchise with that amount of cutthroat? Because I know I didn't. When I played on the computer, I would just reset games if I got too behind. Regardless of your Civilization approach, to get the most out of this game, you're not going to just want to simply casually build up and grow. Rather, there's going to be a level of intensity and punishment to be dealt out here. Modern day accessibility for board gaming really has gone far beyond this 2010 release. But even 12 years later, the Magic Empire building formula with the win conditions makes this worthy of being called Civ in the flesh, or Civ across sprawls and sprawls of cardboard. And for the historic Civ conflict to be felt across from your friends that doesn't need a nuclear blast to feel epic, that for hardcore board gamers is a bold, bold success.
My personal score for Civilization is gonna be a 10 out of 10. A masterpiece. Of course, this is considering that we got all them expansions, because base game would definitely be lower. Civilization for us is typically what's gonna happen if we have a good chunk of the day, but also not enough people for Twilight Imperium. And for me, both games offer a very similar level of epic tabletop political warfare grandeur. Just with different player counts because I refuse to play TI4 with anything less than 6. Anyway, Civilization has cool shit constantly happening throughout a session. One dude is being a hyper-aggressive asshole. Another is trading with everyone. Then there's the highly cultured society, always playing these ridiculous culture cards that come out of nowhere with hilarious effects. How can I not love this game? Constant politics, tons of option possibilities, a good deal of asymmetry, and very thoughtful positioning, plus combat. As well as how all the game's systems tie into one another, so you have to identify how far to go in any one path while simultaneously deciding on which actual win condition you're going for. Plus, every game is always going to be extremely different from the last. First of all, the actual map you're playing on will have its random tiles be different on top of being laid out in different directions. And then don't even get me started on all the different things you can find while exploring. We're talking ancient ruins, huts and villagers, random uranium for nukes. And then the progression in Civ is just top notch. You can use a bunch of resources next to your cities to build more buildings, more figures, more units, more tech. God damn, is it fun to constantly build stuff and then use all that stuff to explore and expand. In most other games where you can build stuff, it's usually just gonna be one thing, like how in TI4 you put like a PDS or like a space dock somewhere. But then in Civ, there's an allure to building a city that then is gonna have a whole ton of other buildings and wonders surrounding it. There's so many things in this game that have an aura of significance surrounding them. Great people, wonders, high-tier tech, cities. It's like you're constantly getting swept up in awe from all your own cool bullshit, and then you get to see it interact with everyone else's badass bullshit. This is what a board game night is all about for me. Get your friends together, enable everyone to be exceptional in their own way, and set the stage for allowing pivotal, memorable moments to happen where everyone can witness and partake in the revelry. I can remember games where someone wins in an epic large-scale siege on another player's capital. Games where someone had a gajillion wonders and got the cultural win after meddling in just about everything with their cultural cards. And even games where someone pulled off an economic win after trading an obscene amount with everyone else. Finally, nabbing that last coin right before the warmonger player could launch their decisive attack. That was me. I was the Americans, and I got the last coin from Ashton because he was sick of being invaded constantly and was totally okay with giving me the win. So that was fucking hysterical. Big slap in the face to Mr. Aggro player.
He's playing the Chinese.
So not only is Civilization an absolute blast to play, but I can't see myself running out of things to do and try because there's still so many factions to play and so many paths towards victory to take. I can't think of any times where I wasn't having a good time while playing, because even if I'm losing, it's still so fun to just go around doing 4X stuff. Like, sure, someone else won, but check out my 6 cities full of great wonders. But even then, most games are decently close anyways. I haven't seen blowout games because it feels like you can kind of just do whatever and still do really well. But then if you're tryharding and doing the politics game right, you're still gonna win by a margin of a few turns, which is super feels good because winners get rewarded for good play and losers still feel like they were a notable presence in the game. You really gotta squeeze the value out of every battle, trade, and negotiation you can get. You can't just default to strong openings and win by ridiculous margins. Okay, you scythe! Fucking fake 4X game. The only problem I got is just one of logistics, because it just doesn't hit the table often since it's so much more likely that if we have the time and people, it's so easy to call like 1 or 2 more friends and get Twilight Imperium going instead. And then as always, if we have 4 to 5 people, it's still super common that we end up just playing Root anyways. But otherwise, Civ is an incredible time, and it's nice that it occupies that weird time from it being like 3 to 4 hours for 4 players whenever those times do end up happening. Now I just need to try playing the Civ video game one of these days. Everyone I know who's into it keeps saying it's so easy to get lost in it and just keep on playing. And that sounds awesome to do with a bunch of friends and a LAN party.
My personal score for Civilization is a 9 out of 10. Excellent. This is in so many ways my dream game where I can finish a game of Civilization against my friends all in person. But I have to admit, this game is unwieldy as heck. And the fact that I have this copy of Civilization and have the friends willing to learn all these cards and rules is nothing short of lucky. If I were to stumble upon this game today, no freaking way would I be reviewing this with both expansions. Civilization for me on the screen has always been a really fun formula that I wanted to stop playing solo and play with my friends. But then digital multiplayer takes too long, and no one is even playing the same version of Civ anyways, with all sorts of mix of casual and competitive mindsets. So then this board game does live up to the dream of bringing everyone to a competitive landscape full of rich diplomacy and crazy tech stories with planes shooting down archers. We're still playing the Civ I know. If a game is going to be this long and complicated, it needs a strong identity to suck me in and keep me sucked in. Humor definitely helps, and Civ has both of these in spades. Even on slower turns, I continue to be engaged how building anything is permanently making your city stronger. Maybe even on a capital with a capital C that I can imagine, like building up Rome. Or how everyone is encouraged to move units on the map. And that constantly makes your opponent's eyebrows concerned because military threat is so scary. From all the components I'm touching and constant progression with a negotiation, it really feels like I'm reliving those stories of building up and tearing down civilizations as I've played in Civ, and also Rome Total War, and then the GOAT, Age of Empires, Conquerors, the GOAT game. Let's get into negotiation. This game has the perfect level of negotiation for me, where the map is easy to read and fast to travel come mid to late game. This can give incentives for anyone to fight anyone or to deal with anyone. And with the poor huts to split up to say who gets what, wow, this is kind of realistic. There's many resources to trade to get someone cool tech. And then there's constant capital attack posturing. Because there are so many things to decide on in game, I found that this civilization allows for the highest amount of player expression I've seen in such an epic game. Every single person I play has their own slightly different style of civilizationing. So they have their own favored win condition goals, ways of posturing on the map, ways of handling all the cards you draw, and this again feeds into the negotiation nuance. Whereas in some long multiplayer games where I just feel out near the end where I'm still playing the game, but I can't really win anymore, Civ has never had that feeling for me because of the alternate win conditions. The 4 victory conditions just immediately ending the game when met still continues to feel fresh and unique to me in a board game landscape filled with victory point wins. Civ's combat system, despite being unthematic and kind of un-Civ-like, continues to impress me in how unique of a feeling it gives too. You have arm races going on and people trying to gobble up barracks or hope generals come to their nations to give them modifiers to win. And then this deck building concept with losing troops permanently when they die continues to give tension to every fight, even early game barbarian fights. There is so much adaptation I need to do. Maybe I can utilize these hidden resources I just got, or move 5 spaces across water to finally attack my friend who has been trash talking me and is finally weakened. But then you also have to account for your opponents getting their own tech, so they're constantly getting stronger too. My brain is just on fire in a good way, looking at the possibilities and how they blend with my imagination for awesome civilization visuals. So it's safe to say that this tech is a huge source of satisfaction for me in this game. But also, this tech gets us down the road of a lot of stuff in this game being a sharp double-edged sword. This fat tech deck being the sharpest part of that sharp sword. There is often a little too much waiting for me in some groups where I'm invested on what other people are gonna do. They just take way too long to do it, but I have to give them the benefit of the doubt because this game is naturally gonna be sweaty with all the moving pieces and how swingy and punishing this game is. And also there's just a lot to read.
You must have more. Wait, I think it's. I don't remember. I'm just gonna play.
The game forces you to try hard.
Play,
Yeah, it does.
play
Yeah.
Okay. But here, I'll reveal my dirty little secret, okay? Where I don't actually try hard this game that much, especially come early to mid game when I'm not that often second guessing my tech decisions. It's safe to say that I'm occasionally just vibing with all the awesome, cool swings and visuals and components in this game, and I'm not constantly thinking on just how to win. I'm not really just calculating all the numbers like some of my opponents do. Why do I do this? Well, not only do I feel guilty about knowing all the abilities and want to handicap myself, I just really want to keep this game flowing to eventually end it because I love the victory condition drama, and then that layered onto me living out and completing my dream of Civ on the table. I also know that with this game's sheer swinginess, that even if a bad tech sometimes bites me down the line, the amount of negotiation and nuance to each tech means that it could actually help me. Like being a coin I needed to win the game, or some tech an ally wanted to copy. This needs to be at least an hour shorter, but hey, I am an idealist. And just like the computer game Civ, this Civilization game time is just gonna get shorter when people play it more and more. And lucky me that my friends are on board with the theme and complexity, so down the line, when we get more familiar, this could be 3 hours with 4 people. I've done a 2.5 hour game with 3 people already, so it's definitely possible. And that consistency would shoot this up to be a 10 out of 10 for me.
I just need one loot. Come on. Can you
Oh, no.
sorry, buddy. You're definitely gonna hit for that. You're definitely gonna hit for that.
I'm not actually attacking you, but if you can give me
No, you're getting fucked. I'm sorry, buddy.
Who knows what's next with this game with all the new maps, all the different permutations of factions and win conditions and techs? So exciting. I'm always learning something new here, and thank you, Kevin Wilson. Thank you. Thank you, Kevin Wilson and Fantasy Flight, for bringing this dream of mine, this Civilization game, to a table for all these timeless memories with my friends. Oh, okay, the review's done. I can look at the other 4Xs like Clips and Clash of Cultures. Yeah, one day, right? We'll get to them. As always, thanks to our patrons for making videos like this possible. We got Manuel G, Brian C, Clifford H, Aaron W, Max B, Bora, Jeremy MC, Charlie B, Quintana, Samus, Travis R, Alvin Y, Volume ZK, Ryan D, Jeff L, Matt G, Spoon71, Ryan J, Brad G, Tiamo Period, Mark A, James M, Evan B, Charles B Jr., Josh A, Basketball, Rado, Suvi, Rhino Z, Cole Nelson, Hati, Pearson B, Omar F, MY, Ethan, Bradley B, Ethan P, Bradley J, John C, Gavin V, Dirk S, SS Co, Alex L, Rob R, 72, Dave F, Josh R, Pil, Pat, Cyril C, Il Wayne, Kyle M, Amir H, Ryla Spin, Keanu S, Alba Bucks, Kyle M, John P, Nicholas R, Robin, Andre, Kevin G, Alex G, and Tim W. We also got our 3 Mad Lads cardboard. We got ZL, Jeff L, Peter Z, and this guy right here. We also got our Mad Lady cardboard. We got Amy. That was it. It's done. Thank you, Gandhi. Thank you, Kevin Wilson. Thank you. Remember to like, comment, subscribe. Bye-bye.